I don't know if we are supposed to have sound or no sound or show music or promos or um, any of that good stuff, but we are operating on old Studio B, so I am not sure if that is coming through on the website. So I am just going to wait for technical help. Meanwhile, you're listening to Carrying Stones and Digging Holes to Cultivate Consciousness, and we're here Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Revolution Radio, Studio B. Tonight is, I think, what is the date? I think it's the 16th. Look,
16th.
January 16th. All right. So,
Oh,
we got Bridgette Lynn Dolgoff and Kelsey Sweet, and we are hanging. All right. So, I don't know. Hold on one second. Kelsey, say something. Talk to the people about donations. I'll be right back.
Donations are super important. We do need donations to fund our programming. We are based off of an international connection of volunteers who make this happen. And so, with things being as they are, you can go to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. There's a donations tab. You can go there, and there's all different ways that you can donate. You can donate by check. You can donate by, I believe, are we on the Venmos? You can also get us on. Hey, we got the mini co-host until tonight too. But let's see. We can go there now. We can walk it through. But there's different ways. You can subscribe to us. You can buy t-shirts and all kind of, like, we got swag. We've got Revolution Radio swag you can buy. So if there's a way that you can sponsor us, you can. If you want to sponsor either Bridgette or I individually or us together, you can as well. I mean, we're all willing here to make this stuff happen. My technology is really slow. It's been kind of a funky week, I guess.
It has.
Right? Like, we're on old servers because things are being
hacked.
Influenced. Yeah, we're being
hacked. Oh, and also, yeah, on the website, our back page is not up right now. So if you want to contact Kelsey, she'll give you her information in 1 minute. And normally we have a back page that you can go to, but you can reach me, Bridgette Lynn Dolgoff, at consciousnessofelconomics@gmail.com. And you can go to my website, coe-llc.com. What's your stuff?
KelseySweet.com, KELSEYSWEET, and you can find all my contact information through there, or ksweetsparliament at Gmail. But I don't know, I'm on the social medias and things like that too. You can bear with me and my technology. But what kind of cereal do What? What kind of cereal do I have? Now you want a snack? I might have to take care of some cereal business here in a minute. We have a couple of different options, honey, but you're going to have to give me a moment. We're doing introductions. Do you want to introduce yourself too? No? Not tonight? Okay, he's growing. It's been a hectic week. But I don't know, I think we're doing all right on this end. I guess getting through it all, right? Getting through all the COVID stuff and the changes and all the things, making stuff happen, making things move forward. I think it's definitely trying times, but times when things can be done. Like cereal. I might have to take a couple minutes
Yeah,
here.
no
Okay.
worries. Hey, and we are up on the players, so I had to kind of do some stuff to check, but we
Okay.
seem to be broadcasting. So you go take a break,
I'm in
and
the
then,
chat room too. I'm just kind of ping-ponging back and forth, but yeah,
oh,
technology
good.
around. Okay.
Oh, good. Yeah,
We're
check out,
connecting
get some cereal. I'll
in the
be
chat.
back. I have
Okay.
something saved too that I was gonna play during our show anyway, so I might do
Oh,
that now.
perfect. We'll start it
Mhm.
now because we missed the intro and all the cock-a-doodle-doo, woof, woof, woofs. It's all filled in with other technology noises too at the moment, but video games are always fun. Like technology for kids and learning and the apps and things. It's kind of neat that the shift to education. But anyway, more about that. Okay, cereal.
All right, everybody. She's gonna like take care of our young co-host. She's got him tonight, so it's all part of the show. Anyway, there was something on here that I wanted to um, there was something on here that I wanted to actually play, but I have to figure it out. I don't know where I put it. Darn, it was super good too. I'll have to like try to fix it and find it and do all that. So anyway. What should I talk about today? Oh yeah, good reminder. Just got reminded, so we're all good about reminder of breaks. So you have to kind of play it by ear if the breaks come and when they come. So we're all good. All right, we are good to go. Good reminder, and we're flying. We are flying. Revolution Radio is flying by the seat of our pants today, and so that's just kind of like where we're at. Anyway, I wanted to see if I could find something really quick. There's a really great um, poem that I was reading, just some really good stuff that I was reading lately. But I don't have it here, so I was just kind of sort of a little ill prepared. All right, so let me go in here and take a look and go from there. And the energy has been accelerating pretty pretty crazy states. I find that I spent probably about 20 years in Kookyville and crazy energy and erratic energy, and finally like around December, around my birthday, so right when my birthday happens, right at the point of basically the winter solstice, and when um, the planet hits the galactic center, everything starts to hit those energies. So this year was really good because I finally, after 20, well, I don't know, maybe 25 years of total hell and mayhem and um, everything that I kind of had to learn finally was like spit out. So I know that a lot of people are just beginning. I don't know what kind of a energy to call it, maybe a self-discovery energy or awakening energy. That's what some people call it. But yeah, so a lot of people are just kind of starting out on that journey, and I'm pretty beat up, so I'm really glad that I was finally spit out. And now I'm like started kind of on a new energy, which has been super great. Not in the past being able to make things work, and things are just kind of coming together effortlessly with a little bit of work. And I think a lot of it has to do with having learned the lessons that I needed to learn and discovering whatever I needed to discover, and I finally kind of have maybe reached not the end of the line. I mean, that would come when I leave my physical body, but I think maybe I've hit a milestone. And it has been a long, strange trip, just like the Grateful Dead sing. It's been one long, strange trip. Anyway, what kind of energy stuff are you dealing with this week?
Mm, movement and flow, I suppose, and transformation, and then just the process of trying to get a vehicle and get things moving and get things going, and just I feel like things are accelerating really quickly and braking and accelerating really quickly and braking and accelerating, like, but in a fun way. And then I liked the mantra that you had mentioned the other day, right? Like, whatever it's going to be after this, it's just going to be more fun. So I feel like just allowing things to be more adaptable and be more playful. I don't know. Things just seem kind of like wacko and intense lately. I'm glad it's not just me.
Yeah. No, I was telling Kelsey I have these 3 statements that I've really been trying to work with for like the last year. A really great book I read in the 80s when I was coming out of. So in the 80s, we were dealing with a lot of, Al-Anon and NA and AA, and a lot of us, were like to do a lot of drugs and drink and party during that time. I know a lot of my friends in the 80s, that's pretty much what we did, was party hard. Um, and then we did so we all started hooking up with the inner child work, and there was like all these books coming out on inner child and the inner child workshops and all the inner child work and the blah, 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 inner child. And then it morphed into, what did it morph into? I just kind of lost my mind for a minute there.
The inner child into the inner child's an interesting state to be in, or just getting back to that play mode.
Oh, it was codependency. So the next stage after, like the United States as a movement, when we're seeking spiritual guidance. So there was the big inner child movement. Then it went to the what did I just say? The codependent movement, and there were a whole bunch of people writing books on, codependency. And no, we're not doing that. No, you're not going out there. Chin's bugging me. She thinks there's like some chicken or something out there she can go get. So
too.
Then we had the codependency movement, and there was I forget what her name was, but you still get the book. It's a super great book, because you start to find out that most of what's wrong with you is codependency. And I think it was called like Codependency No More. And I really remember. Come on up. I have to get her up. We went on a hike, and so her 12-year-old 80-pounder, she's got sore hips. We went up to John's White Trail a few days ago, and she played like it was 1999. And so the last couple of days, she's just been sleeping and sore.
Oh, how fun.
And one of the things she said in the Codependency No More book was that, she would say to herself whenever her mind would get stuck on stuff because of codependency to everything, she would just say, some kind of like simple mantra, like, doesn't matter, 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 until she would forget about and drop whatever it was that her mind was starting to kind of attach onto. Usually it was about herself, insecurity, or about other people, and just, a lot of taking things personally and everything else. So when I choose mantras, they're ones that they help me to let go, kind of slap out things that are getting stuck in my mind that I don't want to have a focus for, I don't want to have intention for. And so the 3 ones are: everything is always working out for me. For me, it's all about me. 2021 is about me. Me, 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 me. The second one is help is always here for me. I have to remind myself of that. And then the last one is I am going to have way more fun, or I have been having, I have been having way more fun, however you want to put it. So it can kind of slap stuff out of my head that I try to focus in on. I love one of my native teachers used to say that one of his teachers, grandmother used to tell him all the time, like, today's a new day and don't drag your stuff into today. Leave it where it's at. Tomorrow's a new day, a new start, and don't bring your past with you. Don't bring your bad mind with you. Don't bring your bad heart with you, and, start the new day. So I've been thinking about that a lot, about, even in the midst of everything and the chaos that's going on, how do I, get more of this adventure heart going, this waking up and wanting to feel like it's an adventure day. What am I going to do? What's going to happen? And so I did that on the day that we went up hiking. I finally had one whole day off. Well, I just took it off and I got away from everything, left phone at home, left everything, got in the van, and we drove up to the trail, and there wasn't a lot of people on it. It was pretty icy. So it was kind of fun because it was slip and slide. And then the smell was so great, the parts where there wasn't any snow or ice, and it was moist earth up there in the forest, and the sun would hit it, and the smell, there's nothing like earth, like that real earthy smell, like the aromatherapy off of it.
That's the best.
Yeah, and then I got a gift. I found a whole bunch of, looked like a huge chunk of dried sap fell off the tree and broke into pieces. So I love sap, making it into salve with beeswax. It's like such amazing stuff. And I was like, oh my God, I don't even have to go look for it. There it is. I have a little plant collection bags in my backpack, so I just whipped one of those bad boys out and collected it all up. So it was like, had this going out there and having this really adventure heart, like, leaving so that it wasn't tainted before I got up there, and then just having this like really, sense of adventure and hitting the trail, and just, whatever was going to happen was going to happen, and just exploring and just really enjoying it. And yeah, and just really, letting everything be gone for a bit so that I could just focus in on that. And then there's a really powerful shamanic practice that I learned a long, long time ago, and it's with really icy cold water, especially really icy cold water coming down, mountain from the mountain. And so the creek was running up there, and so took off my shoes and stood in it, and did my little shaman practice, and just, cleared out the energy pipes and allowed the, water to carry it away. And it was super good. Had a super good day. Don't know exactly what we did for 3 hours, but it was like when we got off the trail, it was just like, oh, it was like this, just really like, oh, just feels so good and so connected and so pacified and so engaged and so connected. And it was just a super great day. Looking forward to, can't really go up there on the weekends because it's way too many crazy people. So I'm going to wait again till like Wednesday, probably go up there again on Wednesday because there wasn't many people up there. So
Yeah, there's more and more people walking around the mountains out here. It used to be easy to get away from people, but now more and more people are flocking to the area.
that is why I'm going to eventually here pretty quick, move my butt to a state that's got too much snow and ice in the winter, and and it doesn't have 4 seasons like it has now here. So I can go back to getting on trails where there aren't a lot of people anymore, finding herbal medicine. And that's the other thing this summer, like I had like a stash of herbal plants, And somebody came and like sourced them. And the part that made me really mad was like they took them all.
Oh no.
They didn't even leave any for nature. And I don't really like that. That's a problem for me because you have to leave some in the ecosystem. I mean, that's like why I planted them there anyway. So they could go to seed. I could collect some of the plant, make some medicine, but every year they're going to grow and expand, you know. And but yeah, I was totally, you know, bummed out about that. But that's what you get with a lot of more and more unconscious people who think they're conscious going out into nature.
Right? Or
Yeah, it was
take.
kind of a boomer.
Mm, this area is so nice to hike around too. I wish I could get out more. Well, soon. At least I'm mobile. Be nice to explore and figure out where to go. I think that's kind of the hardest part about right now. Just anticipating what's going to be next, but not anticipating anything. But having a kid is fun because we just get to wake up every day and play. Or like every day is a new adventure and you kind of never really know what you're going to get. You can't really plan anything, which makes it really hard to get anything done, but other things get done, and I think important things get done. And it just brings a different perspective, I think, or just trying to understand what it's like to look at the world from that perspective and from that lens and what kids are going through right now, especially like how we're supposed to educate people. Because I know you want to do more classes and stuff, and reaching out to people right now is interesting. But I guess with all the digital platforms, there's more and more ways to do it, unless they take away the digital platforms. But
Yeah, well, right now I'm a friend of mine just one of my ceremonial sisters who have done lots of native ceremonial work and stuff like that with she just started a group and it's called Speak Your Truth and it's for women. And we kind of had like our first kind of like meet and greet for like the core of women. So I think in the future we're going to start inviting people, but we're going to have each woman teach something, right? So we have one of the women that's going to teach a physical yoga, fibromyalgia practice.
right on.
Yeah, that helps with physical pain. I guess quite a bit actually. So I'll be excited to see that. But I'm doing the first presentation, and I'm kind of excited because I'm going to teach something I haven't taught before.
This is exciting.
And
Not going to be.
yeah, so it's something that I learned from one of my teachers, Lakota Sioux medicine woman that I studied with when I was 23, and it's one of her energy tools, and it's called screening. So I'm actually going to teach this practice to the group of women. So on the 27th. So I have to like put my little presentation together and everything else that I can teach it to them. So I'm actually kind of really excited about it that the group started to encourage like all these, and I think the oldest woman right now that's in our group is like 77.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I don't know how, I think the youngest one, I think she's about 30. I think she's like a Waldorf teacher. But we're going to be, adding more people in. We just are getting past like the meet and greet, so we'll probably add some more women in. So I'm actually really excited about it because it's going to be, more of a tight-knit group, and we're probably going to be teaching things, more for free, just to educate each other and share, kind of like a sharing group. So that's going to be a really interesting thing. And then, we're going to teach our group or, our practice, our course will be open to everybody. And we're working on it. So February, I hope February comes and I'm going to start spending a lot of time getting it up and going, at least my part of it, so Kelsey can get her part of it done. But it's going to be I think it's going to be a really, really, really good course for people once a month. And it's, it's not gender specific. So anybody can sign up for it and do it, and once we get it up and going and out, and just got to build a design. But yeah, I think this year I'm really really excited about actually doing some teaching. And the hard part is that I've tried to teach a lot in the past, but I forget sometimes that not everybody has spent their whole life studying, like in spiritual practice and doing personal work. And so sometimes I think that what I've put out to teach can be so far over people's heads that, it's why I don't get a lot of people showing up for a lot of classes that I put out. So I'm going to try to, utilize this women's group to kind of, bring this screening idea and teaching down to a base level and see how that works. See if they can grasp it and how it works out for them, and maybe get some feedback.
I think people are definitely going to be a lot more receptive to this kind of stuff right now. It makes sense. I think people are more, I don't know, the walls are kind of coming down a little bit, it seems, or people are more anxious for creative outlets, or having to be at home. They're looking for things to understand self-healing, or maybe it's like one of the collective conscious things, where you get a couple of people kind of bubbling in the pot and then everything else starts coming bubbling around it too. And it'll be interesting to see what happens. Like, things are pretty innovative across the board.
Well, people are more of a captive audience these days.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how the shift happens over time, or how, like, language again seems to shift our perspective of what things are. Because even in doing like aura art for people, or like I draw out the biofield or the energetic field, or I use like a synesthetic thing, right, to whatever I feel around people feels like a color. But I've called it things like biofield in the past, like 10 years ago, and people are like, what is this? Is it something that I have? And there's this awe and fascination, but people have barely kind of grasp the idea of what auras are, right? So I pick a word that's aura because it's more trendy, right? People have an understanding of what that is conceptually, but even then, it's still lacking a lot of depth and meaning. So it's fun to bring that to people. And I think the class that we're putting together is going to integrate all these different things that'll make that stuff easier for people to understand, or at least to employ, like put into practice. So that's fun. It's functional. I don't know if it might have been functional years ago for all people, or I don't. You keep saying that everything is so slow, that everything is so lethargic. Like, it's hard to have an understanding of things, or to have gone through so many intense or interesting experiences. I kind of take it for granted because a lot of people don't have those experiences. But I think when we get alone in our own bubbles, or we go into these like self-transformative things, or become very self-conscious, there are just very strange things that happen, and it's difficult to be able to share those experiences with people, because so many people are afraid of looking at that kind of stuff. But it's so neat when it happens. It's neat when people become self-aware, and when they make big changes. You get to see it on a physical level, like in the work that you do. That's really cool. I'm excited to see how in the long term, like doing consciousness studies, like will help people, or to like tracking people's growth and spiritual development. I think it's really fascinating. But yeah.
Well, in the past, like I've had people, that came to my practice and then, like would go away and then wouldn't see them for like 5 or 6 years, and then they'd wander back for a brief period of time, and then they'd wander back out, maybe for like 10 years um, watching people kind of like, I called it the hokey pokey. You put your foot in, you take your foot out.
Maybe put your hands in a little bit.
Yeah, instead of, being in there for like the long term.
It's intense. We start opening into like that spiritual awareness, into that progression, because the strangest things begin to happen in life. So bizarre. And then how do you explain them to people?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is like, I think it's a lot, it can be a lot more, more, I think that people can have like similar, things happen, but not at the same time, their experiences can be, pretty different with the unseen world. And then, we just don't really have a very good language um, to help people, to be able to, discuss like the unseen world. I think
Well,
it's a
that's why I
little bit.
like art so much, because like arts and music, it's all metaphor. So you get to see the subconscious stuff, and you get to connect with people in a more ethereal way. And then the knowledge and the language, the words all kind of follow after.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was trying to see if I could find. I'll be really mad if they're gone. But I was trying to see if I could find. There's a few videos on here from Marshall Jack talking about some things, but they were like a 3-part, but I don't really see it in here. It's kind of weird how things just kind of disappear off the internet. Mm.
When you're looking for them, huh?
Yeah, when you're like, yeah, when you're looking for them. But yeah, I was thinking I had him on here, but things disappear too. So what do you know? What do you know? I thought it would be nice to have on here for just as something to say, but I have a feeling that they've been removed. I think that's kind of like what's happened.
We've been taking a lot of stuff down lately.
Tons of stuff down.
Yeah.
Stuff has just been going down the big vanishing. And yeah, so anyway, I can't find that because it's not on here, which is kind of a bummer. Just kind of hoping on here because he talks a little bit about people, learning about. Let me see if I can find it. Let me just see if I can find something on here. Probably not. Huh. Anyway. Oh, let's see. Yeah, I don't see anything. But anyway, yep, so it looks like those 3 videos were taken off, but they were kind of cool videos because he talks about why Native people use a drum and why they use they have a feather and why they use smudge, and it was a really good conversation, but it looks like it's been removed. Yep, which is kind of a bummer. It was super good. But probably the person's channel probably got taken down as well, because I think he was the one that kind of did the interview with them. But yeah. All right, so the energy's pretty heavy tonight all of a sudden.
Yeah.
It's kind of like coming down. I can kind of feel it coming in.
Things feel very dense. Everything just, I don't know, today's just been kind of an intense day. We spent a good maybe 15, 20 minutes looking for a basketball that went over a fence and down a hill and across a street and into a bank. Into like a ditch or into a bush. But it's like accelerate and brake, accelerate and brake, accelerate and brake. And I feel like today is just like like everything is coming to a screech before it accelerates again. Just keep feeding it all.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to play. Oh, maybe here it is. Hold on a second. Let me see if I know I have it here somewhere, but I can't figure it out where it's at. Oh, could be here. Hold on a second. There was a anyway, we did a in class Thursday night. The opening poem was from a guy named John O'Donohue, that really like conscious guy, and he died accidentally, actually, and when he was, still like pretty young, and I don't know where the thing is. Yeah, he died on January 4th, 2008. I think he was like really, really young, maybe like late 30s or something like that. It was like a really good. He was very much into like landscapes and beauty and poetry and just amazing kind of guy. And I think, let me just check here. I just wanted to check here about, oh. But anyway, he, I'll send you a link to it. It's was put on a website called onbeing.org, and his name was, it was just a beautiful John O'Donohue, On Being with Krista Tippett. And they have like a lot of art and, just lots of different kinds of stuff and some creative people on here, but that's kind of like his bio. So people should really go and listen, to what he has to say. It originally air date was February 28th, 2008, but they updated it again because it was such a great interview, and then it was updated August 31st, 2017. It says, no conversation we've ever done has been more beloved than this one. The Irish poet, theologian, and philosopher insisted on beauty as a human calling. He had a very Celtic, lifelong fascination with the inner landscapes of life and with what he called the invisible world that is constantly intertwining what we can know and see. This was one of his last interviews he gave before his unexpected death in 2018. But John O'Donohue's voice and writings continue to bring ancient mystical wisdom to modern confusions and longings. But it's super, super, super beautiful. I think it's like about 50, I think it was like about 51 minutes long. So let me just take a look at that real quick. Yeah, so it was like a 51-minute interview that was just so unbelievably spectacular. It just kind of left me dazed, after listening to it. And some of his like poetry is just fantastic. And so we had some of his poetry as opening and closing for our applied anthroposophy class on Thursday, which is a year-long course that I'm taking. And it's more like psychological Steiner work. We're working with a lot of those types of aspects of the psychological, spiritual type practices. So, but yeah.
I think the aesthetics part are cool, and I think aesthetics are really important. People don't really realize the powers behind the aesthetics or behind the way things look or the way we do things. And there's something within people that drives us, I think, to communicate through imagery and through the things around us. Or I was thinking about time earlier too. We use time as a language or just a reference, and just how do we let people know when and where and how things are done. And there are just so many innovative and creative people. And there are people, especially like painters and sculptors, who have put in so much time and energy into making things that are just beautiful. And like the brain has a response to balance and to harmony. When you get into like geometry and the way things are laid out, and we have a preference for certain colors and for the way things are laid out and for orientations and even for how close things are together and how far things are apart. It's amazing just what visuals can do and have like the effect on just self and awareness. So it doesn't, I think that's just why I'm so drawn to arts and the creative practices. It just fascinates me what people have been able to make and to create and why they do it. And that's where the psychology comes into play. I think psychology gets a bad rap a lot of the time. There's a lot of different perspectives, right? It's the mind. It's how we think and perceive. And I like Steiner's work, but it's not super clinical. It's not this experimental thing. It's not something that's detached from wellness. I think that when you bring spirituality into it, you bring that higher purpose and that connection into the process, then the mind makes more sense. But we've deviated, especially if you go into some more of the traditional counseling. I don't know if I really want to say it's the academic sides of it, because academics have really expanded a lot and how they talk about these sort of things, but there's limitations with how the arts are integrated into it. It's not to say it's impossible and that it hasn't been done.
But. Well, I think with Steiner's work, that's what they do, art and all of it, and like nature and everything kind of is in kind of the psychology. There's like a psychology type department at the Steiner colleges, and international, they have programs that they teach people, but they're not like other stuff. It's based on Steiner's work and the development of the 12 senses and the organs for sensing, and through art and all kinds of different kinds of stuff. I think now some of their programs are actually accredited in the United States. So, but the thing is like anytime you do something like that with Steiner's work, you only can work within the movements of Steiner. Because, for example, if you become a Waldorf teacher, you cannot teach in public school, and public teachers do not get hired to be Waldorf teachers. So there is no there's no bridge, to go back and forth. So with their psychology and medicine and a lot of these other things, I think medicine really is the only one that you can. I mean, nowadays, if you were a nutritionalist, back in the old days, if you were like a nutritionalist or you were this or you were that, you could easily take a lot of anthroposophy medicine courses. There's like a whole college in Europe that, when you get out of nursing school and medical school, that you can actually go, to an anthroposophy medical school to learn a lot of like homeopathic remedies. A lot of it is based on alchemy, but nowadays they're like kind of a lot harsher. Like you have to have MD credentials for a lot of it to get into some of these courses. So they become kind of a little bit more stringent, not really open to people, like an alternative, which really always kind of shocks me and surprises me. So sometimes I've got to like, root around until I can find somebody who, lets me into a program with my credentials, because my credentials, I have like maybe 10% Western medicine and 90% alternative. But yeah, so I don't know. I think there's more people kind of moving into some of these movements. There's, big communities that are kind of opening up in the United States around biodynamic farming and Waldorf schools, where they're, coming together. But, this is the thing that's like that, I think about, and I have lived kind of on biodynamic, communities and stuff like that, but I'm just kind of different. And I don't really fit in to 100%. So for example, I may get married at some point. I don't know. It's not like, it's not like the big thing on my, having kids is not like the big, it was never really kind of like, the number one thing to check off on my list. Where I think, like even in the biodynamic movement and Steiner movement, like, the focus is always, family and children and living off, kind of the land and naturally kind of a thing. So I just don't really fit in with that. And then I also don't fit in with some of the programming. I mean, they still advocate women wear long skirts in Waldorf, and it's predominantly women who teach in Waldorf schools. And then, there's a tendency that, a lot of this work, other than biodynamic farming, because it's very, farming is very labor intensive. So other than, the biodynamic farming, but the rest of the movement, whether it's applied anthroposophy or, the anthroposophy psychology or the Waldorf and the education for that and the this, that, and the other thing, all the branches, that Steiner had, it's very, in the modern day, it's very ultra feminized. And I'm not going to say I'm not a very feminine person. I modeled, for 13 years and, I did a lot of like womany stuff. But I'm very much going to be like about the land and you have to be just a little bit tougher. You have to be kind of almost pioneering, and so when I'm in a lot of these Steiner classes, I'm just always amazed at how feminized the men are. And, like it just wouldn't work for me. I have to have a guy that is tougher than me, and I am pretty damn tough.
That's
And I'm pretty hardcore about working and physical work. I couldn't, you know, have a guy who was, you know,
discipline.
painting and doing art and meditating and all this other stuff. I'd need somebody who could actually, help run tractors and who could help shovel and who could, help do, like I'm right in there with the whole thing, help slaughter an animal and help, tan the hide and, do all these kinds of things that are necessary with off-grid living, which is, what my future is going to be about. So I think about like having kind of an ultra feminized guy and thinking to myself like, well, this isn't going to work at all. And looking at, a lot of the courses that I take, involved with Steiner's work. And, they also have a movement therapy. They have, it's called eurythmia. that's really big. I mean, it's really big in the Steiner movement. And people go to school to learn, all the aspects of eurythmia. And basically, it's these movements that kind of come together that Steiner put together from the Akashic records, that the movements in themselves change frequencies, and then when they're applied with each other, and then they do things like, it's kind of interesting, but they have their own whole, like, it's like a dance, it's movement, it has to do with the cosmos and the earth, and they have little wooden things sometimes that they move around, different kinds of things like seeds, and um, but I'm just not, that kind of a person to, be dancing or even be dancing with a group or even wearing a long skirt. I don't even own a skirt. So it's always interesting to me, um, like how, when we're going to be moving everything forward here. And Steiner talks about, you know, bottlenecking, like people are going to bottleneck, and he saw like 500 years into the future, and our near future is going to be one where very few places on Earth we can actually grow food. This is where biodynamic preparations come from. That he went into the Akashic records, and they were, he put them together so that people that learned the preparations could actually restore soil, even like completely radiated dirt. Our barrel prep actually gets rid of radioactive material. They're using it in Russia, and the International Biodynamic Association is actually doing scientific research on it for the last, I don't know, 5 years, on its ability to remove radioactive material out of the soil, out of the water, out of the plants, and then consequently from the animals, that are eating the plants, because it's microbe. It's a microbe mass. It's a certain type of preparation that we make. So, what's going to happen when things start to fall apart, and you have a lot of people who are fairly conscious, like in a lot of the movements with Rudolf Steiner, but maybe don't really know how to do biodynamic farming, and they live in these communities doing other things like, or they're on the outskirts and they're studying different things, different parts. I mean, everybody's attracted to Steiner's work from, like the 50 different branches, right, that are offered. I came in through biodynamics, from the farming aspect. But what are you going to do with all these people that are feminized? They're too feminized. Like there's not enough testosterone, um, in any of them or in the group to be able to wield a shovel for 10 hours a day, or to make, these preparations, which means like, a couple of the preparations you have to use parts from a cow, which means that you have to slaughter a whole cow, and you have to be able to take the cow apart, and you have to use, different parts of the cow, to create an organ membrane, and then put the herbal preparation inside, the herbs inside, and then you sew them up, and then you put them underground, and you have to wait through certain, astrological periods before you can pull them out. And then some of them, like with barrel prep, you start putting them together, and then you put them in a secondary compost, in order to cure and cultivate. But I think a lot about like what's going to happen when, we have like this ultra feminized, ascension-y, new agey people who, can't use a shovel, can't actually do the labor necessary, to, help to grow food to feed themselves. And, when it's going to matter, because having a community and you do this and you do that and you do this and then we do this and grow food, it may balance out now, but in the future, you don't want to be, the 5 people out of 50 on your land that are growing the food for everybody. And then more people are coming to the land and you can't feed them. So, like, I think a lot about that when I'm in some of these classes and I'm seeing a lot of the people, especially the men, and how feminized they are and how like literally frail they are. And the other thing too is like how thin they get and how it, it worries me about the future. It worries me a lot about the future. Um, and I'm thinking about, you know, how it works and how you can and you know what you're going to do and where you're going to go and do you have seed storage? Do you have this? You know, like not so much about. It's funny too because I have friends all the time that are say that'll. Oh, hey, we're on break. Break. We probably won't hear break, but we're on break. Okay, I think we might be in the clear. I tried to listen to the player on the website, but I couldn't get it to play, so I couldn't listen to see if we're on, if the promos are over or not. So anyway, so we're back. I figured 6:02 would be a pretty good time. I also checked out the website for donations. So it looks like we're running a bare bones website, and it looks like the snail mail. If you go to revolutionradiofreedomslips.com and you go to the bottom, you'll see information there to send a snail mail, a check, money order. And I think we have Patreon going, but I don't see the donation button on the site, and I don't see, and we also have Zazzle.com where you can purchase shirts and stuff like that. I think it's zazzle.com/rev, R-E-V, radio, something like that. But you should be able to find us there. You can order some, you know, host and station memorabilia. All right, so yeah, your donations are needed more so than ever. I mean, we're having a battle with the dark forces, and they've just been wreaking havoc on our websites and our network. So we're functioning on the old Studio B, and so we don't have as much of the, you know, show playing or the promos, and we can't really hear those. So they're probably on the server. So anyway, that's where we're at. And
our intro is pretty gosh darn good there, Bridgette.
I know, I love it. I love when I hear it, but we didn't get to hear it tonight because we're working the old. But anyway, if you want to get a hold of me, Bridgette Dolgoff, you're listening to the second hour of Carrying Stones and Digging Holes to Cultivate Consciousness, Studio B, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Saturdays. And you can reach me at consciousnessofelconomics@gmail.com. And you can check out my website, coe-llc.com. Our back page is down. It's down. And then Kelsey's going to tell you how to get a hold of
her. KelseySweet.com. Go there.
And there you go.
There you go, right? I got to renew my domain name here coming up pretty soon. So yes. If not there, I guess base crack. Yeah, you thought it was funny.
So I thought it was interesting you were saying earlier you were talking about time, and you were talking about how we link everything with time. So talk to us about what you were thinking about time.
Like, just time as a form of communication, I guess. Or, like, what is time? Right? Like, because I always feel like I'm in a rush or things aren't moving fast enough. Or, like, just time as a human construct. I like watching, like, videos in time, too. Or like in being a mom and having this little guy, I mean, he just turned 5. Like, time has just flown. I mean, like, just the last couple of years, especially when it comes to transformation in life and things, because I never really thought I would have been here. But I think, like, to speak to, like, what you had been saying, too, about how, like, did you just become unaware of how much you go through in comparison to other people? Like, not to discredit or discount or to minimize any, like, of the traumas that people go through, but I think in doing shamanic work, one of the things that I find most fascinating about it is there's the initiation rites that go into it. And a lot of these initiation rites or these experiences that people have to get to the points of having these capacities to heal, right? Like, they're intense and they're heavy, and there's it's just so much to process, and then trying to relay that in the context of time. I mean, and like what weird times we live in. I'm not really sure what brought it up when I was driving in the car earlier, other than like just having to be patient.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing because Axe is so funny. You're like talking about trying to be serious, and he's back there going glown and farting and pooping, and super funny.
all the patience, right? I just, I don't know. I'm always just fascinated and blown away by like these things. But I think, especially for becoming conscious of things, it's important to be aware of where you're at in a space and time. And then I had like, because I'm driving a loaner car at the moment, and there's not like right now, right? But I've got a loaner car that I've been driving. But the time on the clock was off by about an hour and a half. And I get like kind of OCD about those things, right? So I'm like just making sure like the sound and it's fairly level, at least for me, right? And then like I go to the clock and to set the clock. But I intentionally set the clock ahead by like about a minute. And I just think it's just so fascinating how in the car, when we get lost in time or we kind of think we're going somewhere, to think we're further ahead than we really are. Just take a moment that like when we're rushed, oh, we really have that extra moment, like, or that extra minute. I think that just gives a sense of so much space. I don't know. That's my thoughts on time anyway. Or like, because when it comes to creating things in the creative process and expressing things, it takes a lot of time. And it takes a lot of time to make the videos. It takes a lot of time to paint the paintings and to write the songs and to record the songs and then to do the uploading and then to do this and then to do that. And the payoff isn't always immediate. I don't know. I don't know exactly where I'm going with that.
Or the payoff never comes.
Right?
You die.
Right.
And somebody else gets your payout.
Oh, right? Seems like that's what happens more often than not. It's hard to know. Well, because you were talking about codependency too. Like, there's this weird aspect about people where we have this emphasis on not being so codependent and not being codependent, but we're gregarious. We're a gregarious species, so we need each other. Like, we need people in our lives to do things and to support and like to have the tribe and have the the network and the system. But there, yeah, you have to know how to be able to fend for yourself and to be able to take care of things. And I feel like, well, I had a client of mine do a natal chart interpretation for me the other day. I think that got me thinking about time too, because it's been a long time since I've had my natal chart interpreted, and then getting just to see kind of where I'm at in space time. And I don't know, I like personality profiling, and just the different mirrors, right, to get a reflection of who we are and this and that and like growth and blah 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 blah. But it, there's this aspect in there of just being self-reliant, or like being overly self-reliant, but also the balancing side of that, trying to figure out how to work that into different relationships and things. And I feel like, well, because I've got a lot of similarities where, like, I've modeled for a while, and I'm not ultra feminine. Like, I own skirts and I own dresses and things, and I have things, like, I like to play dress up, but it's work, and kind of like on my day-to-day basis or on my off basis, it's like boots and things that get covered in paint. You know, I like to get dirty throughout the day. And it's interesting having to live in two different worlds, or finding different ways to combine the artistic side with the psychology side, and trying to find ways to integrate those gaps with things. And I think that's where things like farming are important. Learning how to make things from scratch, how to build homes and structures, like knowing how to build from the home, like the homesteading, like knowing how to, like, it all becomes a craft. And I think the words are what really confuse people, because I think people just naturally make art. People just naturally have creative outlets and creative expressions in different ways. Like, it's just very natural to what we do, whether it's patterns or this or that, or finding ways to make marks, or in any of the structures. There's an essence of the aesthetics. There's things that look appealing and things that don't, and look, there's limitations for different people. But if you take the judgment aside, it doesn't necessarily matter if something's good or something's bad or something's better or whatnot. There's this just aspect of people that create, but we have to also destroy as well. Like, learn that a lot with the little ones. They just come through and destroy everything, you know? Like, you spend hours and hours trying to make something and trying to build something. It looks really amazing, and it's tedious and it's laborious, and they come through and knock it all down, or they scribble it, or they you know, it's just that frustration. But there's a beauty in that too. So I really want it. It's kind of what we're dealing with right now. We have this really long dinosaur thing. I don't want to unroll the whole thing, because then we gotta unravel it. This thing is ginormous. How about a tiny little bit more? We've been coloring kind of throughout the show as well.
I was thinking about time, you know,
Here.
that if I didn't have time, there probably would be like no past, present, and future. And I think a lot of, like, when Steiner talks about like animals, and they live in a consciousness that we used to be part of. And it's the dreaming, it's like the picture or dreaming consciousness. And death and life are kind of the same thing. You know, it's an inhale and it's an exhale. Right? There's no thinking about it or any big feelings about it. And so I think, you know, like, even though we're evolving, and Steiner talks about, like, you know, we're in the period where we develop the brain, and the brain develops the ability to think. We're in the thinking epoch, which will lead to freedom, but it's also a very individualized period where some are working on developing the brain and the thinking, critical thinking, and, you know, some people are still not. They're still kind of deeply engaged in the epoch before that, which was this feeling thing where everything's feeling, and they're disassociated from the physical component of it, like the action of the thinking part of it, and then deploying action, to create certain things. And I think, like our system hadn't developed time, hadn't really developed a calendar. I think, more in pagan times, which is just means of the land, people lived seasonally. And so you wouldn't even think that things are strange, like, oh, you have a spring snow. No, you would just kind of be living seasonally. So you would know that at a certain point when the snow was finally gone, even if it was late snow, that then you started the next activity. And there would just be a lot less judgment about where you're supposed to be at and when you're supposed to do this. I mean, just like a simple job, 9 to 5. Like, you've got to have an alarm, you've got to have a clock, you've got to have, in our world, you've got to have all this stuff to live within time, and time being created by somebody else. I mean,
Yeah,
completely created by somebody else.
You have to communicate, and to be able to communicate around the world. And it's a global language almost. And I don't think it's relative to every single culture. I mean, people definitely have a different understanding of what time is relative to space.
Well, yeah, you think of like New Year's, and everybody has midnight at a different time. And if you really thought about that, like you really sat down and you really critically thought about that, you would just think how asinine that whole thing is. Like this moment that there's this New Year's. I mean, globally, you would be like, working on not, like you would just be looking out for the equinoxes, certain astrological alignments, or the solstices, right? More of being in the present moment, and kind of like a present moment prediction of time and where you're at in the cycle, instead of, being told this artificial cycle and world, and all of the things that we're, everything about us is adapted into this system. I mean, we learn how to count. Why? So that you can tell time. Why is that? So that you can work for the machine. So when you have to be
like we're
there.
going to that global system and that global awareness, and then we're all battling in an essence to try to come to a consensus, I guess, of what we're supposed to be as a whole. But then do you maintain the old cultures and the old histories or not? Do you destroy everything or not? And I think when we get our emotional bodies involved in it, we begin to destroy our pasts, then we definitely lose a big grasp on what time can be. It's so important to know the history. But it's at the same time knowing how to innovate from that perspective, knowing what's already been done, what versus what hasn't been done. That's the challenge. But again, it's just, where is that energy being sourced? Where's the information that you're sourcing things from?
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, what if, what if the sources are corrupt? Like, for example,
Try to world, but it's all, I don't know.
I mean, like, for example, this is going to be kind of far out there, but
What time it is?
what did you say? Most of the time it is. um Anyway, so I had this freaky thing happen. A friend of mine who is a really amazing artist, that we were really good friends for a really long time. We're not friends anymore, but and I was going through this really, like, it was an after effect. So I had studied with some very intense medicine and shaman people for a really solid period of time, and so this part where I knew her was this part where I was integrating and consolidating. And
all the stuff lines up with astrology too, right? Like, as as an empirical researcher, when you're looking for like certain correlations in things, right? When it comes to astrological phenomena and what's going on with the stars, I don't know, like it's just no wonder why things are like they are sometimes. I don't know. Like, what do I know? You know, I feel like all the things that we should know are already there. It's just being able to relax enough into it to understand it all. And then at one point, you don't even need words. You don't even need language.
Right. Or maybe it doesn't even matter, right? In the bigger picture. No, so I was doing this integration work on a lot of stuff, and I had this moment where I was looking at this book because it was before I was on the internet.
I don't know. It just seems as far as like dimensional understandings. Just how do you communicate where in space and time you are with somebody, especially when you have those weird like psychic phenomena, things happen, or when you can feel like you can communicate with somebody on an energetic level even though they're not even present. I don't know. I just find a lot of these things just super, super interesting and weird.
Yeah, well, I think that's why they try to like normalize everything in our system so that we stay out of the weird and we stay, working in their machine and making them money. I mean, because I think a lot of that whole system, everything that we're in is based on, a job. Yeah, our education system, you send your kid to school so the kid can literally learn how to sit in one place for a whole day.
Space and time,
Get their coffee break, their OSHA coffee breaks, and then get their, lunch break and then get back to work. And it's like this programming that takes place, and then, they learn time and numbers. And I mean, I think that it stabilizes them in the system so that they can become, laborers for those who know more and, have a lot more history or understanding or however this world works. But anyway, back to this thing that happened. So I was looking at this book and I had this weird flash of looking at this book, and it was cave paintings, right? So not really, petroglyphs or hydroglyphs, but, inside caves, that they would have these cave paintings. And this book was basically about this guy who went around and he photographed some, indigenous people's cave paintings from around the world. And it was like this really weird moment where there was like this buffalo thingy on the wall and there was like this spear going through it. And I really, kind of had to sit back and look at that. And I had this kind of like visual of, like in the past that maybe they worked, better with the matrix, and that they could make a painting if they needed food. And then if they needed it dead, they could just put a spear through it, like this really simple language, like communicating, like the simple manifestation language to the universe. Okay, our tribe needs a buffalo and it needs to be, freshly dead. So I'm going to paint this buffalo. I'm going to put a spear through it. And then I have this sigil, like this like magical sigil. And then every time that we need that we do something to activate it. Like we'll add more paint to it, or we'll do a ceremony, or we'll, turn our attention to it, maybe put some intention into it. And then we go out and at a certain point in time, we keep looking outside the cave to see if the buffalo's dead with the spear through it, so we can go down and, take it apart and, do whatever we're going to do with it and, create some food from it. And it was like about 5 years after I had that thought that I met somebody who had studied a lot of this stuff and had gone around the world and had taken pictures of petroglyphs and a lot of this other stuff, and also had studied with some, shamanic people from around the world. And he like reiterated that back to me, that, a lot of these, symbols in cave paintings and all these other things are the magic, basically. And that now, having worked with Steiner and a lot of the stuff that he talks about previous epochs, that would have been true because we would have had more of an animal consciousness in the beginning. So we would have been a part of the dreaming world, right? And that's where a lot of the shamanic, activity takes place, is in the dreaming world. And even Steiner says there was a point in time in our development that all the spiritual beings had to separate themselves from us. They were all living with us and teaching us things and helping us to develop. And then they started to realize, like, we would never fully become a self-actualized thinking being who has the ability to actually create our own freedom and manifest our own reality if they continue to play in the system. So I think historically, in the past, the human beings were more interactive with the, I don't know, energetic systems, to where if they needed something, it just appeared. They did the right thing, and boom, there it was, right, what they needed. And I think nowadays it's a lot harder, and it's because we're developing our ability to think. And over this process, we've had people who have commanded the system, the matrix, the planet, whatever you want to call it, and been trying to steer us in the direction for their benefit. And so now that, some of us are starting to wake up, it's hard because we don't have a lot of these beings, directly with us every day, that we can talk to about what's going on. And they've isolated themselves from us, and they're watching us, as we're, managing our way down the road by ourselves without a lot of the, I don't want to call them magical practices, but being kind of far away from those practices. And plus, they don't really work anymore because a lot of those systems were unplugged so that we could actually develop so that we didn't have to be taken care of. And we didn't have to be babied and pampered and spoon-fed, and that we actually, had to do it ourselves and then evolve, at the end of our developmental, incarnations as a free being, and then at some point being able to choose wherever that beingness wants to go. Where up until now, there's only been a select few that have been able to remove themselves from this world in a very conscious way. And, moving forth with that. So anyway, yeah. So I think, art now is like a lot different than, it was probably in the past. And, the other thing too is, having had friends that, well, when I had Carrying Stones and Digging Holes, I had Paul Martin on quite a few times, and he's like, in his 70s, and he was a young man. He studied with Wallace Black Elk, and Wallace Black Elk was the son of Black Elk, Black Elk was one of the most prolific healing medicine men, ever written about in the Americas. And there were lots of them, but he was pretty amazing man, and his son was pretty amazing too. And the reason why he ended up studying with Wallace Black Elk was because Wallace's son was his roommate. So they were like, young, 16, 17, 18. And Wallace would come and mentored my friend Paul. And Paul got really deeply into native ways and native information and things like that. And he was the one that actually told me the stories about helping me to understand that, native people weren't just doing petroglyphs or hydroglyphs. They were actually creating things that were power tools. They were actually devices, and that these devices in some cases would be passed down. And he talked particularly, and we had at length lots of stories, conversations. Whenever I get up to Grants Pass, I go sit down with them and listen, to the information that he has. But he was telling me a story at one point about the Shasta people, and that they had been, completely like wiped out and or dragged away and put on, to other land. And the medicine people of the Shasta people, they knew that people were going to be coming, and they had, we could call it prophecy or visions or, whatever we want to call it, but they could see that, people were going to come, and they did not want these technological devices, technologies, native technologies, in the hands of people who could completely destroy the planet or, harm other people. So the Shasta people actually buried all of these technological devices way down in the earth. Like, they spent a lot of time digging and digging and digging to get them in. And when they excavated one of the Shasta sites, they found this stone, and it had like all these deep, like finger grooves in the stone, right? And they had no idea what it was. Like, why would people spend so much time rubbing, like with the thumb, all these different grooves all over the stone, and what was it for? I mean, they could obviously tell that it was something, something had happened. It had been humanized, the stone, for sure. And so some of the people that were excavating, they found, some other stuff. And they found one woman who was still alive, who had lived, she was like pretty old, I think. She was like around her 90s. And she had lived there on the site and remembered a lot of the things that these people were finding during the excavation, and remembered, like, what they were for. Didn't know how to use them or operate them, but knew what they were for. And so when they got to this stone, with all these soft grooves in it, that fingers, had grooved into it, she said, well, that's a rainstone. And they said, well, like, what do you mean a rainstone? And she said, well, this was a stone that was passed down from generation to generation, and that each generation would teach the next generation how it worked. And the different grooves, the finger grooves on the stone, it was used to change the weather. So, 2 thumb moves, counterclockwise, and you could, in a couple spots, you could, tone down the rain, or a couple, clockwise maneuvers with your fingers in several points could, get a snowstorm, or, change the weather, how the water is, how the snow is, how the sun is, how the clouds are. And so this is what she said to the people that excavated, and they can't believe it. But the bottom line is, like, a native like a native ceremony is a device. It's a machine, and it can open up timelines. It can open up portholes. It can open up direct communication between beings and us. It can tune on and tune up people and the land and the energies. It can release negativity. It's also like a frequency, but the way that they work with their devices, all these things are actually biological, organic devices. And we think, of this kind of stuff, and we think about a machine, that has parts and we have to put oil in it, or we have to adjust it, or it has all these gears and all this other stuff in it. And we don't understand that everything around us can be utilized as a tool and a device. And a lot of these places that are left, I always like to tell that story about, I think the weather here, one of the reasons why the weather is really off here is that they've removed a lot of these stones that the Washoe and other tribal people had carved. And so you see these stones and they have these, we can call them cymatic symbols on them. Maybe 2 hours away from here, out in Winnemucca, the Lovelock Caves, there's an area out there that has the oldest hydroglyphs in North America. Oldest hydroglyphs in North America. And you go out there and a lot of them are symbols. They look like cymatic frequency sound symbols. And you go out to a lot of these different kinds of sites and you see things that now we're just starting to kind of, understand and wrap our heads around. Like maybe they use this kind of sound frequencies to lift things, like big stones. I mean, we know like with Coral Castle, that guy was out there by himself lifting, 10-ton stones by himself, and people knew that he was using some kind of Freemason technology. I mean, probably older than the Freemasons, but he was like a Freemason himself. And he was using some kind of, stuff that people were noticing in order to build Coral Castle and move around these huge stones completely 100% by himself over a short period of time, develop this, whole area. So I think, when it comes to like utilizing like organic or biological type devices, including our bodies, it may be challenging to do so and being able to operate them appropriately if we're stuck to time. If we are totally 100% stuck to, I got to get up at this time and I got to be over here at this time. And then I've got this calendar and I've got January, February, March, April. It might actually be difficult since a lot of these organic and biological devices need to be operating in the past, present, and the future simultaneously in order for them to work. The future, because you have to have the memory of the kind of rain that you want. So say, for example, I've got that stone and, I'm moving those little finger holes, and I've got to not only get those finger holes right, but I've got to remember the kind of rain that I want. And I learned this from this, one of my native teachers, said you should work with a rainstone. So I did. He didn't really give me a whole lot of other advice, just a few, kind of tips. And so through the experience of working with like a rain altar, rainstone, I think one of the most important things is that you have to remember. So if I don't have a memory, say I want like, a lot of rain, I want it to pour down rain, but say I don't ever have a memory of ever having been in rain. I mean, rain is a general term. You've got mist, like coming off the coastal ocean, or like a moisture fog. You've got rain, that comes down, in a sheet. You've got rain that, shows up in so many like different forms. You've got rain that is sort of sleet and rain on the border of ice. You've got so many different types of rain and how the rain beads and how it drops. That's important to note, because if you can't have the memory and you can't hold that memory, because you also are a biological and organic machine that's creating reality basically from past experience, right? So that's what your future is. So a lot of your future highly depends on you know, being careful about what your future is conjuring from your past. Trying to, I think, be more careful. So say, for example, you want it to rain, pouring rain. Well, then you're going to have been standing in that pouring rain. And what kind of rain was it? What kind of rain do you need? Is it a warm rain? Is it a summer rain? Is it a spring rain? Is it a fall rain? Is it a winter rain? Is it a coastal rain? Is it a mountain rain? Is it a desert rain? And I'm good at conjuring the desert rain, because the desert here in Nevada, with the sagebrush and the sand and all of the smells, has the most incredible smell that comes with rain that you cannot explain. But when I say, I talk to people about the most incredible smell that I've ever smelt, it is that rain on the desert. And this is why I can conjure rain with my rainstone so well, because I can stop and I can recall being in a place where I'm outside and it starts to rain and I can smell the smell. And then I can recall like what it looks like outside, what kind of cloud cover comes with that smell. I can remember how hard the rain is and the beads of rain. And that's what I need. That's what I need in order to pull the rain together, is that memory and holding that memory and being able to communicate it to that stone. That's the most important part. I think a lot about time, now that I'm like 52, and I think about, okay, well, it's only going to be like 20 years and I'm going to be 70, and then I might not be able to, wield a shovel or, ride a horse or, do a lot of the things that I can do now. And I wonder, like we were talking about with time, what if, time, I didn't learn time? What if it really wasn't part of my system and I could live in like a parallel, and live in the past, present, and future, simultaneously? Would I age? Obviously, I wouldn't really know aging, and I really wouldn't understand aging because there wouldn't be time. And it seems like to me there'd be enough time instead of a lack of time. I think about like, what kind of a being would I be, or what kind of a person would I be, other than the one now that, is partially driven out of survival, on the homeless front, and, having to continue to upgrade my credentials and, trying to, get some of my stuff out on the marketplace and trying to make money, and spending a lot of time, doing those kinds of things, making advertising and flyers, and building courses and classes, and a lot of these other things, in the time, for a time. And I just think about like how different would it be if, I didn't learn about time and time didn't really exist. And it's kind of interesting, this time thing, is coming up with Kelsey. And she's dropped out for the rest of the show. There was an emergency, so we're all good. Um, but recently I got a new van, and one of the things about the van, I love everything about the van, including this one fact, but I think it's ironic and it's interesting, is it has no clock. It has no working clock anywhere in the whole van. And this kind of cracks me up because I've had some stress and a little bit of anxiety when I've had to be at a certain place in time. Like I have to be at a client's house, and I like to try to get there, at least 10 or 15 minutes early because, I've got to drag my equipment out of the car. I'm going to be working on them physically, and then, I've got to get it all set up, and then, I've got to get it sterilized. And then, I have to sit down and kind of talk with them about, how the time frame has been, and then, go ahead and start working on them. And so not having a clock in the car has been pretty bizarre. And a lot of times I leave my phone and my tablet at home. I try not to take that stuff with me in the car. I don't really need it in the car, and I don't really need to be, online or, communicating with people because, I'm trying not to live my life in an emergency mode. I think about, growing up and we had one phone in the house, in the living room. And, if anything happened, people would get a hold of you, and you would find out. You don't need to really know so much blow by blow, minute by minute. And I think it makes you a little OCD, and it makes you have a lot of anxiety that's unnecessary. And I don't really need to be, on people's speed dials, especially when, I'm trying to be in the present moment and I'm headed to go work on somebody. So I want to stay in the present moment, and I want to stay organized within my own self, and also so that I'm in a really a good place as a biologic organic instrument. Especially when I'm going to work on somebody, I need to be really squared and really organized and really, emanating as much energy as possible, and making sure that it's running through my hands and I'm grounded with my feet. And so, when I'm working on people and I'm opening up their physical body and their energy space, that my fingers become these little lasers and tools and acupuncture needles that are opening them up and unblocking them, connecting them to the planet, connecting them to things, connecting them to the energy fields, and also connecting them to the cosmos. So I don't want to be in emergency mode all the time. But yeah. So we have about less than 8 minutes. And let's see here. I wanted to see if I could find something to maybe go out with a bang. Oh, I wanted to do this. This is going to be pretty cool. So there's this place called Steamboat Hot Springs here in the Reno area, and I go there and I soak in the hot springs. There was quite a few years that I didn't go there because it is kind of a really culty place. They do sun glazing, but there's a lot of really weird antics that have been going on in this place for quite a while. So, yeah, when I go there, I try to stay out of it. But there's a guy named Buckman, who I heard about through Richard Allen Miller, who has been working on, sound medicine, like sound type medicine for years and years and years. This is what he specializes in, and he operates out of the Steamboat Hot Springs here. And so he does have some interesting things online that he has to share, like different kinds of sound frequencies that people can utilize on his YouTube channel. I have to move this stuff out of the way. And one of the, I hadn't been in there for a while and looking at some of the stuff, and then I came across one sound frequency situation that he made for the common cold, a cymatic, Gary Robert Buchan, and it's a sound healing frequency, and there's like a visual thing that goes with it as well for the common cold. And I want to see if I can actually play this, and first I need to see how long it is. So I think we can do it for the last few minutes, but I was thinking about, I'd much rather have a common cold sound frequency healing to heal any kind of cold, flu, or virus than any vaccine. I mean, let's talk about where we're going, like quantum medicine versus like, allopathic medicine, which is like a dinosaur. So anyway, let's see if I can play this on our way out today. So let me get out of a couple of these things here. And let me get back over here and see if I cannot get this to open up. And, oh wait, I have to do share screen. Dun, 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 dun. And first I have to go back here. Okay, we're there. We're good. We're good to go. And then we're going to share computer sound. And then here we go. I have to click on the one. Okay, everybody. So this is the end of Carrying Stones and Digging Holes to Cultivate Consciousness. And we're just going to go out listening to the common cold cymatic sound frequency healing. And we'll see you next week. Same time, same channel. Revolution Radio, Studio B, 8 p.m. Eastern, Saturday. So hopefully you can hear this. Okay, here we go. And away we go. All right, I don't think that it worked. Oh, I forgot. You have to push play. Maybe it's not working. I can't tell.